Hey there folks, Rel here. Today we'll be taking a look at the engineer loadout I like to call Tink. And remember that when I do these loadout videos, I am in no way saying that this is the way you should play or that this is the best way to do anything really. And as you see the loadout, at least in this case, it should be pretty evident to you. Tink specializes in close quarters support and anti-infantry, and it is severely flawed when it comes to anything to do with vehicles, but what it does do, it does very well. We'll be using the quick reload shotgun, which is the Thanatos for the VS, the Barrage for the TR, and the Mauler for the NC. We have extended magazines attached, though laser sight can be pretty viable as well, and any scope that you prefer. For a sidearm, we're using a hard-hitting secondary, so I'm using the Underboss with a laser dot, though if you'd like to use something with a bit more range on it, then the Commissioner is a good choice as well. But I'm deciding to emphasize my close quarters capabilities instead of using the pistol to supplement a weakness, which in this case would be range combat, but we'll talk about that later. We're using the standard anti-infantry monoturret with no certs invested into it. I don't recommend certing into this thing in general just because it's mostly a waste of your time, but nanoweave armor, we have that at the highest rank we possibly can. Sticky grenades, and the most controversial part, the standard ammo pack, the one you get at the beginning of the game, the one you start out with. And if you don't want to use the ammo pack, but still want to keep the theme of the loadout overall, then I'd just swap it out for a med kit or a resto kit, as it's going to lend you that survivability, which is a huge motivation for this class. So that's the loadout. Now here's how everything bridges together. Tink is meant to fight in close quarters, specifically, whether it's holding down a point, a hallway, or even roaming around an enemy tower. It has some great capabilities as a support class as well, given that engineers are just so awesome in and of themselves, but it's also extremely useful for constantly laying down cover for allies in the form of an anti-infantry turret. The anti-infantry monoturret is also our only access to a long-range weapon we have, aside from sticky grenades. So it's a helpful tool to aid in our advancement towards an indoor area if we do get caught in the open, and you can lay down the suppression for allies to move up as well, obviously, but it also can't be destroyed by enemy rockets provided they hit the shielded portion of the turret, which is huge, given that a turret destroyed by a rocket will instantly kill the engineer as well. By and large, Tink's focus is to always stay protected, and to a huge degree it takes advantage of the lag compensation techniques that we talked about in an earlier video. So definitely take a look at that if you haven't already. A quick reload shotgun exemplifies this because we should always have something nearby to use as cover, and that'll allow us to get those quick reloads off and prepare for the next wave of enemies. But even if we don't have a break in the action, or if we run out of ammo in our magazine before we can finish someone off, then we do have that powerful close quarters sidearm to back us up. Sticky grenades are practically a straight upgrade over the standard frag in these situations, as it's going to give us the much needed control in tight spaces, and it guarantees a kill if we stick an enemy, and even more if that guy decides to run into a group of his buddies. Nanoweave armor gives us additional survivability in close quarters and is useful especially when we control a biolab or have allied medics nearby. Otherwise, this bonus is going to decay very quickly over time, but it's also important given the way that we'll be playing the class. Now, using an ammo pack in the utility slot allows us to keep an anti-infantry turret up at any given time, as it separates the cooldowns of the two. So this, and not having to switch to alternate fire in order to drop a pack, are the only benefits that running an ammo kit in your utility slot will give. So it's not a very big incentive given what you could be using in its place. But if you do want to play this loadout in its true hard mode form, then skip the proxy mines, skip the health kits, and wear that ammo pack with pride. So that's all the reasoning behind the individual elements of the loadout. Now let's take a look at how to implement it properly. The first thing we want to know in order to make this loadout effective is where to fight and how to get there. So you want to be able to get indoors as quickly as possible, regardless of where you're fighting, so that you can nail down a capture point or deter enemies from coming through a doorway. And the easiest way to do this is to just follow a horde of allies in on a push. You can also use ESF equipped with an injection seat, a spawn beacon, or an instant action button to just drop pod close to a building, or a turbo on the harasser or the flash. Both are viable options. But regardless of how you decide to get there, one thing that is extremely important is that you do not want to draw attention to yourself until you're within effective range to deal with threats. And aside from your turret, sticky grenades are the only real option you have to deal with enemies outside of that short effective range. And as far as sticky grenades go though, one thing that I would want to make you aware of, kind of point out, is that there are some situations where they might not work when you're expecting them to. And here's an example of that. You can see that I toss the sticky at the guy, it sticks to his leg, and I take cover from his assault rifle. Now I'm waiting for the detonation to finish him off, but to my surprise, that's not what happened. He doesn't take any damage from the grenade at all. And we actually chatted about this for a while afterwards, and I asked him if he was running max rank flak armor, which if you're stuck, it really shouldn't matter anyway because it's still an instant kill. But it turns out that he wasn't, he was actually using max rank nanoweave. And this makes sense because I landed 3 shots on him from the underboss after the grenade went off, which put him in the red. So the funny thing is that he said that he saw the grenade go past him on his screen. So as I threw it, it flew behind him on his screen as he darted left. Because remember that the enemy is actually slightly in front of where they are on your screen. So the sticky grenades, and maybe all grenades, I'm not really sure, seem to be client-side in a sense that where the enemy sees the grenade on their screen is actually what's going to be doing the damage. But on my screen, from a client-side perspective, the projectile is rendered where I put it. So there are some discrepancies there, and it will probably make more sense if you've seen the time to kill versus lag compensation video, but it's really a small thing regardless. So provided we could find our way indoors, we want to pick a position where we're not easily going to be flanked. And since we're not using proxy mines, we can't easily cover our flank, though with the recently added activation delay, this may not be the most reliable thing in the world anyway. Once you're in a good position, you want to set up some cover, which in this case is your turret in conjunction with whatever's just lying around. So don't sit inside the turret itself, especially in close quarters. Its primary purpose is to give you something to absorb incoming bullets at close range. And whenever you can, a turret should be down nearby, if not for you, then for someone else. And this is kind of your anchor point. And you want to use it in conjunction with tight spaces, elevated positions, even in doorways. Turrets act as not only cover, but they can also be an annoyance and a distraction. If the enemy has to move or fire around something in order to hit you, that's a pretty big deal, especially when you're countering within shotgun range, where even a single missed shot from the enemy can mean that they will die very, very easily. From a distraction standpoint, if a turret is on one side of the doorway and you're hiding in a corner on the other side, where do you think the enemy's attention is going to go first? I talk a lot about this in the Monoturret guide, which is extremely old now, but is still completely relevant. And the only time you ever want to actually use the turret as it was intended to be used is when you have considerable distance on your enemy, when you're laying down suppressive fire, or when you can force the enemy into cover so that you can close the gap and get into shotgun range. And it's funny to think about it like that, but enemies react to turrets in a very predictable manner. If they notice you and you've peppered them with a couple of shots, they're going to run into cover. That's pretty much a given because you're an invincible wall of doom and destruction. If they're a heavy assault, they're going to pull out their rocket launcher, and then they're going to try to peek out, pop off a rocket, and hopefully get a kill. So be prepared for that. And if they're an infiltrator, or if there's infiltrators nearby, they're going to try to peek out and headshot you with the sniper rifle. And if they're any other class, they're either going to run away, or they're going to trade shots on you whenever their shields are up. But if you've landed enough shots on an enemy to drop their shields, and provided there isn't a medic nearby, assume that they're going to sit in cover for that 10 seconds until their shields come back up, or they'll decide to run away entirely. Either way, this gives you an opportunity to close the distance. Do remember though that Tink is built primarily as a support class, and you should be running around and refilling ammo of everyone, not just the guys all huddled in one spot. You should be repairing friendly max units, you should be dropping turrets as cover, and you should be counting on your medics to heal you up from time to time. And that's where Nanowave is going to help keep you alive in between. So all in all, it's a fun little class. It has a very specific role when dealing with infantry, and it's great for locking down control points for extended periods of time, at the cost of being useless against vehicles. I do really like to play this way, and using that deployable cover to my advantage, and the monoturrets in general I think could use a buff from a protection standpoint, but I also think that they can be very, very powerful when you capitalize on what they do have going on for them. If this video has been interesting, helpful, or entertaining, please feel free to like, subscribe, and tell your friends about the channel. And if you decide to give this loadout a shot, please post a video response in the comments below, and I'd love to see you locking down capture points or providing suppressive fire and doing some really good shotgun play. Thanks very much folks, we're all signing off.